It's working.
Got it.
Referring to live stream. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Beef, Bacon, and Eggs, episode 3 on Islam for Europeans. And I'm delighted to have a couple of guests that I have chatted with several times from south of the border, my fellow Americans, because I'm half American. We have Yusuf coming to us from the state of Washington. How's it going, Yusuf?
Alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you for having us.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. And a new guest, his first time on Islam for Europeans. We have Michael, who I believe, if I'm not mistaken, please forgive me if I'm wrong, Massachusetts?
Correct.
Yes, I got it right. Okay. How's the weather there in Boston?
It's been a nice November so far. I mean, we had a little bit of rain yesterday, but had a couple of days that were on the warm side, and it was I would have called them beach days, but I'm a local, so I really would have gone, 65. I'll call that a beach day.
Yeah. I can't. I don't really hear the Boston accent, Michael. Are you originally from Massachusetts?
Absolutely. And
And
I'm actually from Cape Cod, and
I can hear
Cape Cod, we have sort of like an East Coast accent. It's more similar to a Rhode Island accent. And also a lot of my other family is in Massachusetts, but closer to Rhode Island. So, in Massachusetts, we really don't all have a Bostonian accent. Surprise, I guess. But
now that you've talked a little bit, I can kind of hear the nor'easter accent.
Sure. It's just not the Bostonian accent. It's just the northeastern accent.
Yeah, I can definitely hear it. Okay, so a few things. Obviously, the huge news from a couple weeks ago that people just can't stop talking about is Andrew Tate converting to Islam and the fallout that we're seeing on media, many different media outlets. Things ranging from overwhelmingly positive, to many traditionalist Muslims, and rightly so. I mean, we should be incredibly happy when anyone converts to Islam, no matter what walk of life they're from, to disdain and worry from I guess Muslims who are more on the progressive side, or there's many sisters who are concerned about Andrew Tate's former life and how they think that he's going to somehow take that into his conversion and not disavow some of the things that he's said about women in the past. And then, we'll talk about this afterwards, but, the response, or I guess non-response from various people on the right. But let's get your opinion on, what the response has been from Muslim social media. Yusuf, do you want to go first? I mean, what's your response to those, the detractors, people who responded to the Andrew Tate conversion, who said, that alhamdulillah, it's good that, fine, he converted to Islam, but that doesn't take away from the negative statements that he said about women. Have you been following it closely, Yusuf? Or?
Well, most of those comments, I haven't even seen them go so far as to say, fine, he converted to Islam. I think it really goes back to a lot of, there's, as certain groups of people not seeing Islam as being an identitarian position or identitarian mark, if you will, and not a transformative religion, right? And so if you ignore the religious aspect of everything, then it's no different than if somebody moved to Montana instead, from Nevada. What difference does it make, right? And he's a Montanan now, we have to keep an eye on him, right? Send the law enforcement after him, right? but that's not what Islam is, right? It's a transformation of the heart when you embrace Islam, when you accept Islam into your life and you submit to Allah, which is, the literal meaning of Islam, right? Is then it's supposed to be a transformative aspect of your life. And so, there's on the other side, there's been a lot of comparison to different Sahaba and yada, 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 right? And like, obviously, I don't, and that's been taken in some bizarre directions from the detractors as well, saying like, oh, how dare you compare him to a Sahaba? But I think, obviously, none of us are Sahaba, right? And like, none of us are to that level. But it shows that, like, Umar radiallahu anh was on his way to kill Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? When he embraced Islam, and like he was literally on his way to murder him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so, are you going to tell me that like what Andrew Tate has done is worse than the intention that was in Omar's heart? You know what I mean? And so, like, so it's just, I think it speaks a lot to where we are, what we see within the AMC, the American Muslim community, but also the Western Muslim community, right, at large, right, and the liberal ethics that are kind of espoused by it.
Yeah, it's kind of odd because when I converted in 2003, like, and I'm in no way comparing Salafis to to liberal Muslims, but there was still an expectation that one would start to purify themselves from the bad things they were doing. But at that time, you didn't really have social media. You didn't have Twitter. People weren't on their iPhones. I mean, like it was much more of a sense of community, when, like it was the Salafis running basically all the masjids in North America. And, you would go to these events and there would just be hundreds of Muslims there. And, like people kept each other in check in terms of not doing things that were haram from their old lifestyle. To the point that you couldn't even reference like a song from like another, from like a rock group or something, like, but it wasn't this, like backhanded, oh, I'm better than you, holier than thou approach. It was that we had genuine concern for each other's, well-being, and we wanted to, obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as possible. And at the same time, it created this sense of, community, and you felt like you were in a community. I'm no longer, a quote unquote Salafi. Do I do understand several modes of their perspective, but now, it's almost like, but again, there were certain aspects when we first converted from, Salafiyya that were, not cancel culture, but at least, if you did something that was quote unquote bid'ah, like it was almost like there was some accountability, like, you had to clarify your position, as a Salafi, but still there was a sense that, that you were, once you did that and repented, you were quote unquote back on the manhaj. But now there's not even that. I mean, like with liberal Muslims, there's no core ethics in terms of like, okay, this person's repented, or he's sincerely, going back to, trying to, wants to repair, his lifestyle. It's almost like, if this guy's not quitting everything 100%, going cold turkey, we don't want him. And even if they did, would a lot of these liberal Muslims even accept him after that? So I don't know. Well, you go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, it really, I guess I interrupted you, but I think a lot of this really comes back to this backstory that we might not be seeing as much. And that's really, Andrew Tate was standing for this masculinity, this, he was saying or alluding to things that said men are leaders and go be a leader. And, and that's in contrast to a lot of messaging today that says that women are leaders and, maybe also men are leaders with women. It's a, that altogether is a different paradigm. And I think also I've seen in a couple groups I was in, um, Muslim parents concerned about their Muslim boys watching Andrew Tate. And it's kind of, I think that's part of a backstory, and there could be, family dynamics. The sister knows that the brother is watching Andrew Tate, and they don't like some parts of it. They just assume that, this is so extreme, and he's a misogynist and this and that. And which I'm not going to say he isn't, even in some cases, but or wasn't. But it really kind of, I can sense a fear that some of these, sisters, fathers, mothers of these young, teenagers who are watching Andrew Tate, that they think suddenly now Andrew Tate has become a Muslim, and the teenage boy is saying, "Look, I was right," and 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 it's kind of like, no, it's not supposed to be like this, and it's, I think nowadays things move too quickly to it's things move too quickly that you can't, it's not enough to kind of evolve over a few years. And that's what people normally do, at least in some manner. They can't just like, everything that he said is still out here, and it's, and I think a lot of his core ideas, and he still wants to empower men and young men, and help them to navigate their testosterone, and what can they accomplish, and give them motivation to do things like that. But for some reason we have there's this just complete lack of communication between this one side that doesn't like that just doesn't is not attracted to this type of language that he does, and the motivational speaking and that kind of thing. So coming back, I mean, yeah, like you were saying before, previously, you'd expect that, basically he's a new Muslim, the masjid's going to whip him into place. He's going to, a few years from now, he's going to have the right idea, no matter what he was doing before, there were all kinds of, like, you can have all kinds of wild positions that people were on previously. But I think Muslims in general had this idea, even, if you want to call them liberal, non-practicing, secular, they would still have this idea that, well, if he's a new Muslim and he sticks around the masjid, they'll eventually whip him into shape, and he'll be kind of normal, right?
I don't. Do you see that happening? I mean, I could. Alano's best.
I mean, I'm saying, I think previously, I think people would imagine that that would happen, and I don't. Nowadays, I think that maybe more secular Muslims are not really as attached to that, or they're really just kind of repulsed by a lot of aspects of like a Salafi masjid, for example, or a Deobandi masjid, or like any other masjid that's really kind of like got a system going, and they like, and they say what's what.
Yeah, I mean, with these masjids, they're looking for the archetypal convert, the convert that does the PhD level. They convert to Islam and have this complete Damascene style change where they change the way they dress, change the way they act. They go to Medina or Cairo and do their ijaza. They they marry a born Muslim. They have a whole bunch of kids. They end up doing the interviews on on Dean TV and stuff. And that is a very, very, very thin slice of converts that actually make it to that level. But like you said, this is what a lot of Muslims have in their head as, this is the next step for this convert. that they're going to become, this superstar. When the reality is, most people who convert to Islam, not, especially from a European background, but, Latino, African American, whatever, don't ever reach that level.
Right.
And, the fact that he's this superstar with a bottomless pit of money, like, we don't know what direction it's going to go in. Who knows what he's going to fund, what he's going to say. And then, that brings me to my next point, in that Yusuf, until, this event that occurred with True Geordie, which we'll talk about in a little bit, there is almost no response from the right from his conversion to Islam. As you said when we were talking offline, why do you think that is, Yusuf? I mean, can you speculate onto like the fact that it's just it was almost like a non-response from people on the right?
Yeah, I mean, it's I've seen very, very little, like just extremely little. And the response that I have seen, it's been essentially from people who didn't like him on the right before, right? And so then they're just like, oh, well, he just became a Muslim, which, blah, 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 and like different tirades that they're on, right? And I'm not going to repeat a lot of some of the few things that I've seen and what they've said, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's been almost entirely silent. And so, yeah, I find it kind of interesting that it's been like, I'd almost even hesitate to call it a non-issue, right? Like, it's like, because it was like completely ignored, which, kind of going back to some of what Michael said, like all these like kind of disenfranchised, like teenage boys and like all this, right? And like this issue that we have with masculinity and with, just the disenfranchisement of males, and particularly white males, right? If we're talking about those on the right, and those people that, the young men that he would appeal to the most, and those who would also share a lot of the same audience with him on the right, they just have completely ignored the issue. And so the event, I guess, is better than the issue, right? But yeah, just completely ignored it and have remained completely silent. And maybe they don't know what to say about it, right? And because a lot of what he said before his conversion was Islam is the answer, right? Islam provides the structure that we need to empower men, to empower young boys, to empower families, to, really kind of set society right. And he put his money where his mouth was, right? And so maybe they don't really know how to respond to that. And so,
yeah, my take on it is that Islam, among circles in the right, is kind of the love that dare not speak its name. Like, it's such a taboo subject, and there are people on the right who have respect for Islam, and others who absolutely can't stand it. And to even talk about Islam, I mean, if you have run, say, for example, an Odyssey channel, or if you're still by some chance on YouTube, if you haven't been deplatformed yet, to even bring up Islam as a whole, you're going to get a lot of hate. People are going to unsubscribe from your channel, and it's just something you just sincerely don't talk about unless you're following, like, the basically the party line on what people think about Islam. And also, I think I don't want to get canceled here, but there was another person in the media, namely Kanye, that was just taking up all the media time for people on the right. Like, I was literally looking through my feed, and all of my Muslim accounts were talking about Andrew Tate converting to Islam, and all of the right-wing accounts that I kind of survey, they're all talking about Kanye. So it was almost like two totally different stories appearing at the same time. And on top of that, I think a lot of Muslims identify, with Andrew Tate, because he's not just because he's very successful, and he talks about masculinity, and he's got a very strong personality, he does talk about the the New World Order a lot without drawing in specific groups, but he just talks about this kind of like this kind of the deep state a lot, and how the I guess Western governments he does talk about that a little bit, but I think I think I don't know if he were in the same status and that he was white and he converted. I think born traditionalist Muslims, they would have the same love and respect and I guess admiration for the fact that he converted to Islam, but I don't think they would be able to relate to him in the same way per se. Whereas the people on the right, it's just they don't. I guess their mode of politics and the things that they care about, he just doesn't really bring up those issues. And what's really going to inflame this even more is the fact that there is this British, I guess, sports YouTuber. His name is True Geordie, who I had never even heard of before, before this incident had happened, and you guys had never heard of him either. He actually does this. This guy, True Geordie, does not like Andrew Tate at all, and they're in fact enemies. And he said an Islamophobic comment, like a week ago. It was basically a joke about saying that how he's going to blow himself up, just to get rid of Andrew Tate, and that was alluding to his conversion to Islam. And Andrew Tate clapped back and said, he's going to see that there's going to be consequences for saying that, and he basically called him fat and vulgar. And after this, True Geordie, I guess he realized his mistake. He made an apology on his channel, and but that was too little, too late. But because he was banned by Twitch, he was banned by 3 other of his sponsors, and his life is basically over now. So, most of the Muslims, they just were very pleased with the fact that this guy who we've never heard of before was basically canceled. Saying that it's a good thing. There was a few Muslims who were saying, what, he apologized. Islam is supposed to be the religion of mercy. But right off the bat, I can tell that this incident is going to be instrumentalized by people on the right to foment more anger towards Islam, and sort of draw people on the right away from their admiration towards Islam and into this intersectional struggle, and use that kind of vitriol to gain thousands and thousands of more supporters. Now, if I was, like a traditionalist Muslim, and or even Muslim from any born Muslim background, I could totally understand where they're coming from. They're saying, what, those bridges have already been burned on the right, and we don't want to try starting to build those bridges because they don't like us anyway, which is understandable. But I'm just wondering if this was, if there's going to be a lot of negative fallout from this, and how Muslims are going to react to it, and if it's going just to create more division on both sides. So, what do you guys have, like, a general take on that, or Michael? I know it's a lot to digest, but
Yeah, I had a couple ideas coming back, but yeah, there was quite a few stops along the way. Maybe Yusuf has something first.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, Yusuf.
Yeah. Well, I can see that, I would say that it would be a problem to see. We don't want to see sort of this, as you said, intersectional struggle against Muslims and Islam. I think that that's kind of a nightmare. But it wasn't the Muslims that actually, deleted his Twitch account and that kind of thing. It wasn't, so I'm, that sounds to me like the conversation that people would have on the playground at school, and I guess they might, the teacher might give them a detention or something like that, but what happens after school? They figure it out, and it's what it, I don't know. It's a bit, I'm not in favor of too much control like that. And I think that even just, I mean, the teacher might, they go to the principal and the principal says, hey, Jordy, apologize. He did. I didn't watch the video, but it was like 20 minutes long. It was like a 20-minute apology. What more do you want? I don't know. It seems kind of extreme, but I don't know. But that's kind of what we're into. We're maybe it wasn't maybe it wasn't his apology. Maybe he was just talking about Andrew Tate, and that was a problem. I don't know.
He's not very well liked, but I think it's a good point that it's not us doing this. It's not Muslims per se that are canceling him. It's the fact that it's just things that we just can't talk about, and there's absolutely no discourse going on. Yusuf, did you want to?
Well, just to kind of give it some perspective is, look at Andrew Tate is like a kickboxer, right? And like Jordy, I think he's like a boxer or something. Is that correct? Something to that effect.
Something like that, maybe.
Yeah, and so these guys are in combat sports, right? Like, look at anybody who follows like MMA or boxing or anything like that. There's all kinds of trash talking that goes on before fights between people left and right. And just look at, for example, what Conor McGregor was saying to Khabib before their infamous fight, insulting his wife, insulting Islam, insulting every, like up and down and left and right, and even continued to do so after the fight, right? And so, and I mean, Conor's career, this might get some hate, but is essentially over. But that's because he's lost, right? Because he's stayed out of fights, because he hasn't, continued with his career, right? But it had nothing to do with what he said. He didn't get canceled. He was still huge. He still has, when he has fought, has continued to draw in massive crowds, and and is still considered a favorite of Dana White's and the UFC community, right?
Yeah, ESPN loves that drama.
Right. And so the idea that this guy is canceled strictly because of some really, like, I saw the clip and it was like a completely offhanded comment, right? Like, it wasn't even like, oh, Muslims are suicide bombers and so he's gonna go blow up. He wasn't even being like directed like that, right? He like the guy who was sitting next to me was even kind of like, what are you talking, like, it didn't really even register to him what he was saying at first, right? And so, like, for such an offhanded comment, like, I think your point about Kanye being in the media and like kind of some sensitivity being thrown around at this point, right, is probably probably accurate, right? Like, there's probably just a little bit of oversensitivity going around because of some of the comments that are out there and what's being said and these kinds of things. And so he said the wrong thing at the wrong time, right? And otherwise it would have just, people on YouTube, people all over the place say worse things about Islam on Twitter, like everywhere, all the time, the way worse than that, and they're still out there, right? Like, why he particularly got singled out at this particular point in time, yeah, it's kind of odd.
Well, I actually, I have a question. While we're talking about anti-Islam hater, this and that, we just had an election cycle in the States, and I was thinking about this, and I felt like this time I did not see any sort of mention by the Republican Party about Islam at all. In fact, there was Mehmet Oz, who didn't certainly didn't push it in anybody's face that he's a Muslim guy, or that, hey, I'm a Turk, that kind of thing. He didn't even really push it culturally. But and I wonder, I could actually see in Pennsylvania, I was wondering if it was almost like a strategy to try to get Muslims to vote Republican with Mehmet Oz, but I think it just turned out to be kind of like just no strategy maybe, um, but I wonder, just, I know the Republican Party is not, it's a conglomeration of many different, you know, right-leaning ideas. But what do you think does that related to, is that related to the right being silent on Andrew Tate? And there was also this Dearborn, Michigan, school board meeting situation. And I almost wonder if, some are kind of maybe wondering about some kind of cooperation between Muslim traditionalists and conservatives. And could that be playing into this situation?
I think so. I think now in 2022, the game has completely changed because the agenda of inserting all this literature that is completely against our faith into the public school system, especially in Dearborn, it's almost like that issue has trumped, no pun intended, many Muslims in those areas to say, we are completely against this, and if you guys want to read it on your own time, that's fine, but don't indoctrinate our children. So it's almost created this type of weird one struggle type of atmosphere that wouldn't have been present even 3-4 years ago. 3-4 years ago, yes, that was still in the media, but it was more about COVID, which kind of, I guess, even Muslims were kind of split on. But now that we have this issue where even though Muslims are so leery about voting Republican, and I'm not endorsing the Republican Party either. If I was in the States, I wouldn't vote for either major party. But I can see where Republicans are saying, wow, in the past 16 years, Muslims have always voted Democrat. So there's no point in trying to reach out to the Muslim community because we would lose so many votes from the anti-Islam crowd that these few scant Muslim conservatives would never make up for the amount of votes we're losing on the anti-Islam right. But now they're seeing that if we can get actually support from Muslims who would actually vote for us, it might actually be in our favor to ally with Muslims on this particular issue, to the point that we get more new Muslim followers that would supplant the amount of people on the anti-Islam right that would actually vote for us. So I do think that there, is a shift. Before 9/11, actually, yeah, most Muslims voted Republican, as you know, and then there was a shift to the Democratic Party, and rightly so, because of the neoconservative wars in the Middle East after 9/11. But that still remains to be seen, because that's still going to be a shaky alliance. It's just interesting to note that.
Well, but your last guest, the convert in Saudi Arabia, he was saying that even there, a lot of people were supporting Trump because of his different approach to foreign policy. So right. I don't know. I don't expect Trump to be the next president, but if there's another similar Republican approach to foreign policy that continues, and there's even more contrast because the it was like Bush started it, and Obama kept doing a lot of the same things that George Bush was doing in terms of foreign policy, right? I'm not that great to speak. I'm not a great speaker on politics, really, but I just imagine that I think the Muslims, the closet Muslims or the closet Trump supporters among the Muslims did like Trump's foreign policy.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was an isolationist to an extent. There were some exceptions, but the Democratic Party, were, I think a lot of Muslims started to see that they were just as belligerent when it came to foreign policy. And again, their position on Zionism is basically moot now. There's just basically no difference. Whereas in the past, Democrats they supported the labor equivalent in Israel, but now it's just you can't tell any difference between the two parties. Yusuf, did you see kind of the same shift, the red shift in Seattle for the Muslim community, or is it people just don't want to talk about it? No.
There's no red anything in Seattle. So but I guess kind of bringing back to a couple of points. The Mehmet Oz, I actually saw way more said about Mehmet Oz running as a Republican among the right than I did anything about Andrew Tate, right? And so way more commentary on this, right? And so especially for those who are a bit more black pilled, they saying like, look, there's like a non-choice in Pennsylvania. You've got like this Turkish Muslim guy and like Fetterman and all the names that they wanted to call him, right? And so saying that like, so they actually, a lot of people had a lot more to say about that, right? But then also, kind of getting aside from that, I think it's a lot more difficult for the right to continue to portray Islam in the way that it traditionally has in the US, when every Muslim who gets elected to any kind of office is a progressive leftist, right?
Yeah.
And so, how are you going to villainize Sharia, right? Anti-Sharia, creeping Sharia, right? When everybody who's elected to office is a leftist, right? And everybody knows that that's a farce, right? Like people on the right know that that's a farce, right? People, Muslims on the ground for the most part, I hope,
Well, they
know that
might
it's
say
a
that
farce.
they're like Muslim Brotherhood operatives or something like that, right?
Right, like trying
They
to
still do.
accelerationist, right? Secret, but yeah, it's like that doesn't represent how most Muslims feel. I think it's a growing trend among Muslims, especially young Muslims, especially second generation immigrant Muslim families. And, I think it's a growing trend. But I don't think that's especially first gen, like Muslim, immigrant Muslims. I think a lot of first gen, new like convert Muslims, like I don't think that's the norm among most people. I think in Seattle, I definitely see a lot more of it, way more of it than it probably exists in other places, right? But I don't think it's the norm across the board. And so it's hard for it's hard for Republicans to use that, right? And also I don't think it's the topic of conversation anymore, right? So the villainization of Islam played its part, and the state got the spying that it wanted, to be able to do domestic spying and different things like that. And now the focus has shifted back to the domestic terrorism and things like that they were focusing on back in the 90s when things like Timothy McVeigh were going on, right? And so they were able to kind of fulfill what they needed to get the laws in place, and now they've kind of shifted back and their focus is somewhere else altogether. And so the state really, all the establishment people in the state, that's not their focus. There's no purpose in villainizing Islam anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this was big in like the early 2000s. Even, Rebel Media, I can't stand Rebel Media. They kind of shifted away from, focusing specifically on Islam. Now it's all about Trudeau and, the quarantine and, the the COVID restrictions. That's like their main focus. But I'm sure they're still aware that, there's a large contingent among that group that, has it in for Islam. But, like, that all these politics is just, it's so mind numbing, and it just gets us away from spirituality and, like getting closer to Allah and learning about Islam, like you said in the beginning, Yusuf. And, like I at a certain point you just say, I just don't even want to talk about it. I just want to concentrate on being a better Muslim, focusing on the ground level and, working out what we're trying to do, which is, help give dawah to our to the people in our families and our communities. So I mean, let's just shift gears and just think about, like, do you think that we're on, like, what do you think are, like, the next steps that we should be taking? Do you think we're doing things the right way, or what would you like to see Islam for Europeans do as like a next step to to garner more support and like, hopefully, inshallah, improve the status of converts and, by and large, the Muslim community as a whole. Do you think,
Yeah.
do you think we're on the right track here? I mean, we don't have a lot of resources,
Right.
but we're doing what we can. But
Yeah, I mean, I think we do what we can, right? I think a good first next step is for me to finish up my lessons. But
great job on those, by the way.
But yeah, no, I think just more of what we're doing. It's hard to kind of put our feet on the ground, right? And I think like I've been reading Brother Williams' message to a white man in America, right? And I think I had a lot of the same feelings before reading that, but I think a lot of what he says about trying to build like independent communities is important, right? And it's something that we need to really look more and more into, right? And so, and I definitely recommend that book for anybody who hasn't read it, anybody out there, right? But it's, I think, yeah, we just need to do, we need to figure out how to go about building communities and to focus ourselves, right? To centralize ourselves a little bit more. We're a bit spread out at times, right? And that's something like, even yesterday, I saw at the masjid another brother, another white brother that was just like a couple people down from me at Juma, right? And so I made the concerted effort to go and speak to him afterwards, right? And so we walked back to our cars and talked to each other, and we actually grew up around, like in the Midwest and stuff like that. And he was from mostly Texas, but when, he'd been in Missouri a lot where I grew up and this kind of thing. Right. And so, just building those connections and, being able to foster more of a community with with the people that we see around us. And, the more that we're able to do that, I think the better off we'll be, and just continue to push forward with that.
Yeah. I mean, I there's so much support from born Muslims. I think it's an absolutely wonderful idea. It's just establishing it as a concept. I mean, a lot of converts just are terrified of of even pursuing this. I think, which is understandable. I mean, people have their own lives. I mean, to have like a subgroup like this, like it raises a few eyebrows. But I don't know, like, have you talked about Islam for Europeans ideas, Michael, to people around the mosque in your area or in Muslim communities there, or has it just been more of a silent opinion?
Well, kind of the people that I've shown it to are sort of like, well, it's like I guess it's just a theoretical idea at the end of the day. I mean, um, you know, I'm kind of on my own, I guess, right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, I know it's going to take some
It would
time.
be I yeah, there are so many mosques around. I've been trying to, because the longest time I was actually like during the pandemic season, I was way out on the Cape, on the outer Cape actually. Um, and I was just kind of like enjoying a rural marsh view and just kind of on my own. Um, so after I moved closer to Boston, and I've been trying to kind of get inventory on all the different mosques, and thinking of moving again closer to another. I decided that I got to go back to the suburbs a little bit,
Mm,
and trying to connect with a mosque, but also trying to but and but there are some mosques that I see, and I just don't see any converts around there.
mm,
I've had the conversation a few times, to say, are there converts around here? And the response is usually kind of like, well, we've seen one here or there. There are a couple right in, like, in the deep in Boston, where they run new converts classes and things like that. I'm just kind of phobic to the city, so I just don't make it in there that much, which is kind of silly, but I really should. I don't know.
yeah, I mean the convert classes, I mean they're helpful. I mean they do they're I think they're essential. I mean I think anyone they should be learning Islam and implementing it in their life, and learning the proper like aspects of our faith. But
Well,
it's
actually, I shouldn't. I need to kind of retract some of my statements and kind of reiterate it. Now, actually, there was something interesting that we're doing in one mosque, and it was really all this other convert lady's idea, really, to develop this program where basically it's like converts helping converts type of thing. And it's just taking a long time to have the board approved, the masjid board to approve that, and just to put a form on the website, and so that we all get emails when someone fills out the form. It's kind of like it's something anyway. But there was actually I guess there was a survey done through this masjid community, and which is more suburb. It's pretty far suburb, on the southwest of Boston, halfway between Providence and Boston, really. And they actually did a survey and found that there were approximately 70 converts associated with that community. But they also did a survey, and they asked if they felt that there should be any events or specific activities or something like that related to converts, and the overall answer was no. And so I don't know where that really stems from. I think probably a lot of these converts are kind of integrated into families and that kind of thing, because the type of people who are actually connected with that community, I know are usually more well established, kind of like, you don't become a member of the community, just a couple years after being Muslim. And but I know they're around, but a lot of them are. I have work to do, basically. So but and I'm not. It's not necessary to say that I'm not trying to, like, talk with someone and say, hey, let's build our own masjid and that kind of thing, just to kind of at least build some network, I think is better, even if I don't have to, tell them that, well, we need to create our own sub community and this and that. I think that could even come on a bit too much for some people.
Yeah, I mean, there's a straw man argument that whenever we want to do something on our own to work on our specific issues, it's seen as dividing the community, when they're the overwhelming majority of people in the mosque, and they do things their own way. And maybe even the term subcommunity to them, like, they have this knee-jerk reaction that it's going to create division. But that's like, and a lot of converts don't want to do it either, because like you said, they're already integrated into the Muslim community, and they don't want to, they want to feel like they're fully part of that community. Yusuf, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, a lot, but yeah, I think sometimes, like what you said about sub community, sounding like it means like something separate and something like cut off, right? And I think sometimes the terminology is not great. And I think also, especially in the West, like in the US, Canada, there's a lot of, and to the UK too, probably, but I have far less knowledge about the culture in the UK, right? There's just this fear of like, white people getting together means like we're going to start up like our own clan or something like that, right? And
Yeah.
so you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so and so there's kind of like, there's constantly like kind of like this like leeway into like what our ideas are and like what we really mean when we talk about like Islam for Europeans. Like, what do we mean when we're talking about a sub community, and like these kinds of things, right? Like there's groundwork that has to be laid before we really get into the meat and potatoes, right? And so that's kind of a big problem with like it's an uphill battle, and a lot of that is like the cultural stuff that we have going on, right? That's we're kind of we're like salmon swimming against the stream, right? And so it's we I when I talk to other Muslims from various backgrounds, like by and large they're receptive to the idea. They think that it's great. They're like, they think, they realize that they have their own families, their own communities, their own cultures, and these kinds of things, and that like this is beneficial, right? That this is a way for us to have that ourselves, right? I think, and then we also have kind of the, you've talked about it in the past, kind of like this global monocultural movement that like, oh, if Islam doesn't have there's no culture, there's just Islam, and like bringing culture into Islam is like dangerous, and like blah 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 blah, like all these kinds of things, and like this complete disregard for how Islam has manifested itself across cultures and across time throughout history, right? And so like it's like this completely like close-eyed view of what Islam is and like how people actually interact with the faith, right? And so
yeah, or a very strong emphasis on negative components of culture and then conflating that with culture.
Right.
Yes, exactly. I mean, if someone does something bad in the Muslim community, that's just, I guess if that's referred to as cultural, or someone who's not practicing at all is considered a cultural Muslim. It's almost as if, practicing Muslims from that culture don't have a culture; they just have Islam, which, it's not true. I mean, we all have our own ways of doing and ways of talking and slang, and cuisine and dress. Even if it doesn't matter if you're practicing Muslim or not. But yeah, I think Muslims are starting to realize that is not particularly the case. So I do feel that they're starting to realize that the monocultural approach has not answered all their questions. It has not helped Muslim communities move forward. And, it's just perfectly natural for Muslims from a particular background to want to associate with one another. But that doesn't mean that, we can't say salam to each other on the street. That doesn't mean that you cannot go to this mosque unless you're of a particular culture. You can fulfill all the rights and duties of a Muslim, of your fellow Muslims, without having to do absolutely everything together. So, I mean, I understand the knee-jerk reaction from a lot of them stems from, the being oppressed by nationalist governments back home as well. Even if they weren't personally, there's a lot of that sentiment, that people feel from their family members or their own countrymen, being oppressed by the government of their country, who are stemmed from nationalism. So, and historically too, there's, Western societies just breaking apart the Muslim community like a plate. So I do, we have to be very sensitive in how we approach this and understand that they're coming from that perspective. But
Well, I'm sorry, I interrupt you again.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, but I was just saying, we also need to be our own examples first as well. So, we should try to embody what we're trying to support as well. If that's, we're trying to present a positive image of, I'm from Massachusetts, I'm a Muslim, my family's been here for 5 generations. So, and I'm, just to kind of have that positive image for other Muslims to see that. And I do think that, when you just talk about ideas about converts, native Massachusetts, building your own, Massachusetts Muslim culture or something like that, or New Englander culture, Muslim culture. I think those are, those are ideas that people are receptive to. Absolutely. But it's sort of another issue to try to build a network and community and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tricky, but we have to start somewhere. And I think that, we've come a long way. I mean, we got almost 1,400 subscribers here on the YouTube channel. And, we got a core group of guys that, want to, that have helped us out a lot. So, inshallah.
We should really say, if you're just kind of watching I4E and you would fall into one of our categories, or you would want to support our categories, then reach out, leave a comment on YouTube if you want to leave, make an anonymous account, but do try to reach out to us.
Yeah. More outreach, the better, from whatever walk of life you're from. I mean, like, I've tried to get other Muslims on. I've had other Muslims from different walks of life on, and to show that, we don't want to be a separated community, that, we want to belong to the greater ummah, and we want to interact with, Muslims from all walks of life. At the same time, we have our own issues that we need to work on, as they have their own issues that they need to work on. But, we're not going to be, like these white saviors that speak for the entire Muslim community when we haven't gone through the experiences that they have. So, yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm glad that you're able to come on, Michael. And, you're one of our newer members. So, I mean, like, I'm glad that, you're able to come on and everything. And may Allah, give you all the best in this life and the hereafter. And Yusuf as well, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and reward you for the work you're doing for the Islam 101 courses. Anything that you want to add for the Islam 101 courses, Yusuf? The things that you might want us to collaborate with, or besides the last 2 episodes that you want to do, or
Yeah, I'm trying to get those out. But yeah, I mean, I think that's I think that's a good thing, you know, to kind of build up a little bit of an educational initiative, you know. And so you know, I know that we have some more knowledgeable brothers whose names I won't mention out of, you know, but you know, I think we have resources to be able to do a lot more, and I think we should take advantage of that too. And so but yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction. I think, you know, we need to you know, this is a small initiative right now, but I think, you know, nobody's ever gained their rights, their freedom by asking, right? Like, we have to work for it. We have to take it for ourselves, right? And, you know, and we need to step up to the plate, and the things that we want, we need to make happen. You know, we need to materialize those things, and we have to work for them. And you know, you're putting in a lot of effort and work for that. And, you know, and I think more of us, you know, speaking to myself especially, need to do that, to, you know, step up and to do that work, and to really get out there and, you know, get something going, you know, and get some, you know, some activity going, and be able to take some leadership roles, and be able to, you know, make things materialize.
Inshallah. I mean, I created the survey that I want to survey, you know, non-Muslims on, and you know, get their opinions on Islam and Muslims, and you know, hasn't come into fruition. But if we can implement this idea, it won't take long for it to, you know, as a micro solution, you know, as a template for Masa to use. And once inshallah they see the success in it, I think it'll catch on really quickly. But like you said, it's just about having a good, you know, foundation. But yeah, that's anything else you guys wanted to talk about, or announcements you wanted to make before we wrap things up? Or
Nothing from my side.
okay.
Jazakallah. Thanks for having me on.
No, thanks. Thanks for coming on, guys. Really appreciate it. One, I think, a little announcement. One of our Islam for Europeans members, and I'm going to put the link in here as well, is creating a new channel called Honest History, and I'll provide the link below in the description. But other than that, yeah, thanks for those who are watching the episode. Thanks for dropping by. I'm Robert at Islam for Europeans. Please like and subscribe to our channel, and thank you, Yusuf and Michael, for coming on. Yeah, and you know, may Allah reward us for our humble efforts, inshallah. May Allah give guidance and peace to all of the Muslims. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Robert, and take care. Bye bye.